There's a woman who used to run toward danger without blinking, and right now she can't remember why. She's standing in a room she's told is hers, being handed pills she's told are vitamins, smiling at people who love a version of her that no longer exists behind her eyes. Somewhere in that silo, someone is watching all of this happen and calculating exactly how long they can let it continue before she becomes a problem worth erasing. That's where episode 2 picks up. And by the end of it, you'll understand why the scariest weapon in this story isn't a gun or a bomb. It's a pill disguised as care. Let's start underground, because that's where the real machinery of this episode lives. Juliette is mayor now, but it's a hollow kind of power, propped up by a story other people wrote for her. She's told she took shelter in a hut after her cleaning, recovered, and made her way home. It's a clean, comforting version of events. It's also a lie, and her body seems to know it even when her mind doesn't. Fragments keep surfacing, uninvited, like static breaking through a signal that someone is working very hard to jam. The person doing most of that jamming is Camille, and she's not acting alone. She answers to something called the algorithm, a presence that talks about human lives the way an accountant talks about a budget. It watches Juliette's recovery like a graph with two competing lines. One showing how much stability her presence brings to the silo, and one showing how much danger she poses if her memories come back. The moment those lines cross, the algorithm has already decided what happens next. That single detail tells you everything about how this system works. It doesn't view Juliette as a person to be healed. It views her as a variable to be managed. And if managing her stops working, she becomes an entry that gets deleted. Then a note arrives, hidden in her food, telling her to come to the marketplace if she wants the truth. She burns it, badly, and Camille almost catches the smell. It's a small moment, but it's the first real crack in the performance Juliette has been putting on, and Camille clocks it immediately. The system that's been managing her starts to worry, because an unpredictable Juliette is exactly what that graph was built to prevent. Now, before we go further into the silo, we need to talk about a woman named Charlotte, because her story is the emotional mirror of everything happening to Juliette. Just decades earlier and out in the open world, Charlotte was a fighter pilot. Her squadron got wiped out during a mission that involved something nobody wants to explain. A strange, nanotech-laced cloud during a bombing run over Iran. She survived. Her mind didn't survive intact. She wakes up unable to recognize her own brother, calling him by the wrong name entirely. Enter Victor, a doctor with a theory and a tragedy of his own driving it. He lost his wife and child in an accident he caused, and instead of sitting with that grief, he built an entire treatment around erasing grief for other people. He tells Charlotte's brother, Daniel, that he's protecting her, filtering out memories too traumatic for her fragile mind to hold. It sounds compassionate on the surface. Underneath it, it's something else entirely. A quiet, methodical redaction of a woman who happened to witness something the government doesn't want written down. That's the trick this episode keeps pulling. Every act of protection doubles as an act of control. Victor isn't just shielding Charlotte from pain. He's deciding which parts of the truth she's allowed to keep. And the people around her, even the ones who love her, keep going along with it. Because it's easier to accept a manufactured piece than to sit with an uncomfortable question. Why was she really up there? And what did she actually see? A reporter named Helen refuses to let that question go. She tracks Charlotte down at the clinic, wheels her into the garden where no one can overhear them, and starts feeding her details about the mission, hoping something will click. Something does. Charlotte remembers a fragment of a secret meeting the two of them once had. But the price of that memory is a panic attack so severe, it sends her right back into her shell. Helen gets caught, gets escorted out, and in the parking lot she drops the detail that changes everything. Charlotte came to her first. Before any of this happened, Charlotte was the one asking why the government was so eager to bomb a target that didn't match the story they were telling the public, and why pilots were being sent up in planes stripped of modern equipment, untraceable by design. Sit with that for a second. A woman who asked too many questions about a mysterious operation is now the woman having her memories scrubbed clean under the banner of medical care. That's not a coincidence built into the script. That's the entire thesis of this storyline. Back in the silo, Juliette starts pulling her own thread. She digs out an old note, one surely delivered from a woman named Martha years ago, and it stirs something. She heads down to the Down Deep to find Martha in person And along the way, we learn just how deep the fallout from her amnesia actually runs. Shirley can't bear to be near her anymore. She waited days for Juliette to wake up, only to discover that the woman who opened her eyes didn't know who she was. That kind of grief doesn't heal on a schedule, and Shirley makes it clear she's not ready. It's Knox who steps in to talk to Juliette honestly, or as honestly as he's allowed to. Everyone's been given a script for how to speak to her, careful instructions designed to avoid disturbing whatever fragile recovery Camille claims is happening. But Knox bends the rules anyway. He tells her about Lukas, missing since the rebellion, once Bernard's shadow, and possibly the only person left who knows what Bernard knew about the world outside. If Juliette wants answers, Knox is telling her, stop waiting for them to surface on their own. Go find the one man who might actually have them. When Juliette finally sits down with Martha, the conversation doesn't go the way she hoped. Martha isn't interested in narrating a whole life back to her secondhand, and she didn't send that mysterious note either, which leaves Juliette with a decision to make on her own. Trust the instinct that's always guided her, Martha says, even without the memories attached to it. She hands over an old multi-tool, an artifact that might do what words can't, and lets Juliette walk into the unknown. That's how Juliette ends up at the marketplace, shaking off her minder Jerry by turning a crowd of adoring fans against him and getting pulled into a hidden meeting with Kennedy and the outsiders. What they show her next is the kind of evidence that doesn't need memory to be understood. A helmet stamped with the number 17, worn by a version of herself who was never supposed to exist in a silo labeled 18. A warning note in handwriting that isn't hers. The outsiders believe there are other silos scattered out there beyond the one they call home, and that Juliette walked through one of them and came back changed. Pieces of her time with a man named Solo start flickering into view. It's not the whole picture yet, but it's enough to plant a question that Camille's medication was never going to be able to fully suppress. The meeting gets cut short when Kat spots trouble coming and the outsiders scatter through a hidden tunnel carved into the wall, straight out of a Prison Break movie. Camille and Paul sweep in to collect Juliette, and she does what she's learned to do best in this new life: perform. She plays along, tells Camille what she wants to hear, paints Kennedy as unstable, and buys herself a little more room to maneuver. It's a survival skill, and it's also proof that whatever the medication is doing to her long-term memory, her instincts are still sharp. Meanwhile, a woman named Orla is still missing, and nobody seems to have a good explanation why. Maybe she got too close to whatever the outsiders are moving between levels. Maybe she stumbled onto the real purpose, behind a supplement everyone's been told to trust without question, something called vitamin D+. Keep that name in your head, because it matters more than it sounds like it should. That night, Juliette does something small but seismic. She spits her pills into the sink instead of swallowing them. Standing at the cafeteria window, staring out at the horizon, a memory surfaces clean and whole. A conversation from long before any of this, about a constellation shaped like a W. It's proof, undeniable proof, that the second she stops taking what she's being given, her mind starts finding its way back to itself. But she's not careful enough. Her caretaker checks the sink, finds the untouched dose, and now the people managing her know exactly what she's doing. Which brings us to the real gut punch of the episode. The algorithm reveals its endgame, and it isn't subtle once you see it clearly. If the individual approach to controlling Juliette's memory starts failing, there's a backup plan for the entire population. Vitamin D+ is being prepared for the water supply, a mass dose designed to wipe the memory of an entire silo at once. Not just Juliette. Everyone. Every person who took part in the rebellion, every person who remembers what it cost. All of it flattened into a blank slate that Judicial gets to write on however it wants. Think about what that actually means. A government that can't control what its people remember chooses instead to control whether they remember at all. It's the same play Victor's running on Charlotte, just scaled up to an entire underground civilization. Erase the trauma, erase the reason for rebellion right along with it, and call it healing. Here's the thing the algorithm keeps missing, though, and it's the thread running underneath both storylines in this episode. Memory doesn't only live in the brain. It lives in objects, in notes passed hand to hand, in a multi-tool given at exactly the right moment, in the particular shape of a constellation glimpsed through a window. You can drug a person's mind, but you can't drug every artifact that mind has ever touched. That's why this isn't the first attempted memory reset in this silo's history, and it's very likely not going to be the last one that fails either. So now the clock is ticking on two fronts. Juliette has to figure out whether to expose what's happening. Before Judicial decides she's crossed the line, the algorithm drew for her. And somewhere in the pipes above the silo's water supply, a shipment is slowly making its way toward a delivery that could wipe out everyone's memory of ever fighting back. The only way to stop it might be finding those barrels before they're poured in, which means the next few episodes are going to move fast. What stands out most watching this unfold is how familiar the logic feels. Those in power rarely announce that they're erasing the truth. They call it treatment, they call it stability, they call it vitamins. And the people carrying it out often believe they're doing something kind, right up until the moment they're asked to look at what it's actually built to protect. Where do you think Orla ended up? And do you think Juliette gets to Lukas before Judicial gets to her? Drop your theory in the comments. I read every one of them. If this breakdown helped to untangle what just happened, hit like, subscribe for the rest of the season, and share it with the one friend who's still confused about why Juliette keeps calling everyone by the wrong name.